This topic is medicine. I've divided it into a few sections. This section is anatomy. Anatomy is clearly a very big topic with lots of words, so I've just chosen a few words. If you're doing this course, you probably have at least an intermediate level, so I'm sure you know common words like brain, heart, lungs, etc. So I've chosen some words that all native speakers know, but that aren't as common. And most of these don't come from Latin or Greek. A couple of them do, but most don't. And that means that in most other languages, these words are very different. So I hope that even if your English is relatively advanced, you'll be able to learn something new. Okay, the first word is bladder. Bladder. It's a countable noun. It's an organ inside a person or an animal which is like a bag and holds urine before it leaves the body. You can see a diagram in the picture. Here are some collocations. First we have to empty one's bladder. That's a phrase that doctors often use. It simply means to urinate. Then we have to have a full bladder, a bladder infection, bladder cancer, and then the gallbladder. I put that separate because it's technically not a collocation. The gallbladder is another organ. It's a small organ which is attached to the liver. It's an organ that you can live without, and some people have it removed. A mild bladder infection might disappear on its own within a few days, but if it doesn't, antibiotics are usually recommended. Now we have bone marrow. Bone marrow. It's an uncountable noun. It's the soft substance in the center of bones. Here are a few collocations. A bone marrow donor. That's a person who donates bone marrow. A bone marrow transplant. That's a medical treatment that replaces some of your bone marrow with healthy cells. And then we have bone marrow cancer. A bone marrow transplant is also called a stem cell transplant because it involves replacing damaged stem cells with healthy cells. The next word is bowel. Bowel. It's a countable noun. It has a couple of meanings, but they're very similar. Number one, the intestine, which is the long tube that food passes through after it has been in the stomach. Number two, a part of this tube. So the small bowel or intestine, or the large bowel or intestine. Here's a usage tip. For the first definition, it is generally used in the plural. Bowels. Just like we normally say intestines. Here are a few collocations. To empty or move one's bowels. That's something that doctors say, and it means to defecate. A bowel movement. The small or large bowel. And bowel cancer. He got sick while traveling and has had problems with his bowels ever since. She had to have an operation on her large bowel. Now we have skull. Skull. It's a countable noun. It means the bones of a person's or animal's head that form the shape of the head and protect the brain. In the picture, you can see a skull and crossbones. It is possible to recreate faces of people who lived centuries ago using their skulls. The next word is spleen. Spleen. This is a countable noun. It's an organ near the stomach that acts as a filter for your blood and fights certain types of bacteria. It helps clean your blood, in other words. A few collocations: a damaged spleen, an enlarged spleen, and a ruptured spleen. If you have a ruptured spleen, it means the spleen breaks open and blood comes out. It can happen if that area of your body is hit very hard, maybe playing sport or in a car accident. It is possible to live without a spleen, but you are at higher risk of infection. Now we have vein. Vein. It's also a countable noun. It has a couple of meanings. Number one, a tube that carries blood to the heart from other parts of the body. Number two, a very thin tube on a leaf or on an insect's wing. The adjective is veined. That means having or marked with veins or thin lines. In the picture, you can see veins and arteries in an arm. Not a real arm, obviously. In case you're confused, arteries carry blood that is rich in oxygen away from the heart, and veins carry blood that is low in oxygen back to the heart. Arteries and veins are also called blood vessels. He was so nervous that he could feel the blood racing through his veins. Here, race means to travel very fast. It can be fascinating to examine the veins on leaves. That's what you can see in the picture. Now we have womb. Womb. Yes, the B is silent. It's a countable noun. It's another word for uterus, which is the organ in a female mammal in which a baby or babies develop before birth. A little usage tip. Uterus is the medical term for womb. In everyday language, native speakers use both words. My feeling is that people are now using uterus more often. To me, womb sounds slightly old-fashioned, but lots of people still use it, so it's good to know both words. An ultrasound scan can show the position of the baby in the mother's womb. Now we're going to look at some names of illnesses. I won't show you any pictures here because I know that some people don't like looking at pictures that show diseases. I'm sure you know what I mean. Sometimes you Google something and you think, oh no, I didn't want to see that. So I haven't included any pictures here. But obviously, if you want to see pictures, you can Google these yourself. Okay, the first word is chickenpox. Chickenpox. It's an uncountable noun. Chickenpox is an infectious disease which causes itchy red spots on the skin and a mild fever. The scientific word is varicella. If you don't know the word infectious, it means that the disease can be passed from one person to another. It's the same as contagious. Chickenpox is normally mild in children, but it can be quite dangerous if you catch it as an adult. Now we have food poisoning. Food poisoning. This is also an uncountable noun. It's an illness which is usually caused by harmful bacteria in food and mainly affects your stomach and bowels. It's basically getting sick from eating bad food. She never wants to eat at that restaurant again because she got food poisoning the last time she ate there. Now we have measles. Measles. This is also an uncountable noun. Actually, all of the words in this section are uncountable nouns. Measles is an infectious disease which causes a fever and small red spots. The scientific word is rubeola. Here are a couple of usage tips. It is sometimes preceded by the. For example, he had the measles as a child. Number 2, it is followed by a singular verb. For example, measles is a lot less prevalent nowadays thanks to vaccines. I know it has an S on the end, but we say measles is. Please note, measles is rubeola. German measles is rubella. Although most people recover from measles, it can cause serious complications which are sometimes fatal. And now we have mumps. Mumps. It's an infectious disease that causes painful swelling under the ears and on the sides of the face. A swelling is an area on the skin that is larger and rounder than normal. A couple of usage tips. It is sometimes preceded by the. For example, the mumps was a common childhood illness before there were vaccines for it. Number 2, it is followed by a singular verb. For example, mumps is a highly contagious disease. Like chickenpox, mumps is usually more serious if you catch it as an adult. Next we have smallpox. Smallpox is a very serious infectious disease that causes a fever and spots on the skin and often leads to death. The scientific word is variola. In 1980, the WHO officially declared that smallpox had been eradicated. Remember, we had the word eradicate in the biology section. It means to completely get rid of something that's bad. And the WHO is the World Health Organization. Now we have whooping cough. Be careful of the pronunciation. The W is silent. It's whooping cough. Whooping cough is an infectious disease that causes severe coughing. The scientific word is pertussis. People of all ages can catch whooping cough, but it is especially dangerous for babies. Now we have a miscellaneous group of words. Miscellaneous means consisting of different things that don't seem to be connected. All of these words are related to health and medicine, but different aspects of health and medicine. The first word is anesthetic. Anesthetic. It's a countable and uncountable noun. In British spelling, there's an extra A. Anesthetic is a substance that makes people or animals unable to feel anything, especially pain. Let's see the word family. First we have the adjective anesthetic, then the verb anesthetize, which means to give somebody anesthetic. Then we have the noun anesthesia. That means the use of anesthetics. Next we have the noun anesthesiologist. Yes, that's also hard for native speakers to say. An anesthesiologist is a doctor who gives anesthetics to a patient. And then we have the noun anesthetist. An anesthetist is a doctor or a nurse who gives anesthetics to a patient. The use of these last two words varies in English-speaking countries. Usually in the US, an anesthesiologist is a doctor, and an anesthetist is a type of nurse. Here are a few collocations. First, we have general anesthetic. If you receive a general anesthetic, you are completely unconscious. Next, we have local anesthetic. A local anesthetic affects a particular part of the body. And then we have under anesthetic. If something is done under anesthetic, it means that anesthetic is being used. The introduction of general anesthetics in the 19th century revolutionized surgical procedures. The operation will be performed under anesthetic, so you won't feel anything. The next word is blister. Blister. It's a countable noun. It has a couple of meanings. Number one, a swelling on the skin that is filled with liquid and is usually caused by rubbing or burning. You often get them on your feet when you wear new shoes. Number two, a swelling that is filled with air on a surface such as paint, rubber, metal, etc. Let's see the word family. First we have the verb blister, and that means to form or cause blisters. Then we have the adjective blistered. That describes something with blisters on it. And then we have the adjective blistering. That means done very fast or extremely intense. The adverb of that is blisteringly. If I wear these shoes for too long, I get blisters on my ankles. One way to prevent blisters forming in paint is to let it dry completely before exposing it to moisture. Now we have cure. Cure is a countable noun. It has a couple of meanings. It can mean a medicine or treatment that makes a disease go away, and it can mean something that can solve a problem. The verb is also cure. That has a few meanings. The main meaning is to make an animal or person healthy again. Then we have a couple of adjectives. First we have curable. That means able to be cured. We say that some illnesses are curable and some are incurable. Curative means able to cure illnesses. Here are some collocations. An effective cure, a miracle cure, to develop a cure, to discover a cure, to find a cure, to work on a cure, and then we have the phrase, there is no known cure. There is no cure for measles, but you can sometimes treat the symptoms. It's possible that hiring a new manager will be the cure for this company's problems. And now we have diagnosis. Diagnosis. This is a countable and uncountable noun. It means the act of identifying a particular illness or problem through examination, or the decision reached after this act. Let's see the word family. First we have the verb diagnose, which means to say what problem or illness a person has. Then we have the adjective diagnostic, which means related to diagnosis. And then we have the adverb diagnostically. Here are some collocations. Early diagnosis, medical diagnosis, correct or incorrect diagnosis, to give a diagnosis, to make a diagnosis, and to establish or reach a diagnosis. Early diagnosis increases a patient's chance of recovery. He still doesn't know what's wrong with him because he's received different diagnoses from 3 different doctors. And a little usage tip. The plural is diagnoses. Now we have the verb heal. Heal. It has a couple of meanings. Number 1, to make or become well again, especially after an injury. Number 2, to make or become strong again after a bad experience or painful emotion. Let's see the word family. First we have the noun healing, and that's the process of becoming well again. Then we have the noun healer. A healer is a person who treats sick people, but usually using alternative medicine. We don't normally call doctors healers. This little cut should heal by itself in a few days. Wearing a cast and resting will help heal the broken bone. A cast is what you can see in the picture. A broken heart can be harder to heal than a physical injury. Next we have the adjective nutritious. Nutritious. Of food. Containing many substances that your body needs to grow and stay healthy. Let's see the word family. First we have the noun nutrition. That's the process of getting the right type of food for good health, or the science that deals with this. Then we have another noun, which is nutritionist. That's a person who is an expert on nutrition. Next we have the noun nutrient. Nutrients are substances that living things need to survive and grow. So proteins, vitamins, minerals, etc. Then we have the adjective nutritional. That means relating to nutrition. It has neutral connotations, whereas nutritious has positive connotations. And the adverb of that is nutritionally. A few collocations. A nutritious diet, a nutritious meal, a nutritious snack, and nutritious food. A nutritious meal isn't necessarily expensive. Frozen vegetables are often just as nutritious as fresh vegetables. Next we have physician. Physician. It's a countable noun. A physician is a medical doctor, especially one who is not a specialist. A general practitioner, in other words. This word is mainly used in North America and is slightly formal. You don't need to use this word, you can just say doctor, but it's good to be aware of it. Here's a usage tip. Be careful not to confuse this word with physicist. A physicist is a scientist who studies physics. If you get food poisoning, you should drink plenty of fluids and see a physician if your symptoms linger or are severe. Here, linger means to last longer than expected. This word is prosthesis. Prosthesis. It's a countable noun. A prosthesis is an artificial body part, such as a leg, arm, or tooth. The adjective is prosthetic. For example, a prosthetic leg. That means an artificial leg. We also have the noun prosthetics. That means the branch of surgery or dentistry that deals with the replacement of missing body parts with artificial ones. Here's a usage tip. In everyday language, we normally say a prosthetic X, or even an artificial X. For example, a prosthetic hand, or an artificial leg, etc. In other words, the word prosthesis sounds quite formal, and we don't usually use it in everyday speech. 3D printers are now often used to make prostheses. Her new prosthesis allows her to do most of the things that she was able to do before. And yes, the plural is prostheses. Now we have repellent. Repellent. It's a countable and uncountable noun. It's a substance that keeps insects away from you. The verb is repel. That means to keep or push something or somebody away. The adjective is repellent. That means very unpleasant, or it can describe something that keeps something away. Some collocations. We have bug repellent, insect repellent, mosquito repellent, and moth repellent. A moth is a type of insect that looks a bit like a brown butterfly. They sometimes destroy clothes and other things made of fabric. It's important to use insect repellent if you plan to spend lots of time outside in the tropics. Lavender oil is sometimes used as a natural moth repellent. Now we have scar. Scar. It's a countable noun. It has a couple of meanings. Number 1, a permanent mark left on the skin after an injury or surgery. Number 2, a long-lasting emotional injury following an unpleasant experience. The verb is also scar, and that means to leave a scar, a physical one or an emotional one. This man has a small scar on his cheek. Some collocations. A deep scar, an emotional scar, a permanent scar, a physical scar, a psychological scar, and then we have to leave a scar, and we can also say a scar fades. Here, fade means to become lighter in color. She had quite a large scar on her leg after the injury healed. He didn't have any physical scars from the car accident, but he was left with some psychological scars. Next we have side effect. Side effect. It's also a countable noun. It has a couple of meanings. It can mean an effect from a drug, which is usually unpleasant or harmful, that happens along with the desired effect. And it can also mean an unintended or unexpected result of an action. Here are some collocations. An adverse side effect. If you don't know the word adverse, it basically just means negative or undesirable. A common side effect. A harmful side effect. And a serious side effect. Common side effects of this drug include sleep disturbances and decreased appetite. These local policies could have beneficial side effects for the national economy. This word is stitch. Stitch. It's a countable noun. You might know this word from sewing, but we're just going to look at it in a medical context. It has a couple of meanings. Number one, a short piece of special thread which is used to join the edges of a deep cut on the body. It's usually plural. Number two, a sudden pain in the side of your stomach or chest, which is usually caused by running or laughing. The verb is also stitch, and that means to sew the edges of a cut together. He fell off his bike and needed 20 stitches in his leg. After running for 10 minutes, I had to take a little break because I got a stitch in my side. Next we have withdrawal symptom. Withdrawal symptom. It's a countable noun. It's an unpleasant physical or mental effect that someone experiences after they stop taking a drug. It could be an illegal drug, a medication, or even something like caffeine or nicotine. It's usually plural. You may experience withdrawal symptoms such as dizziness and headaches if you suddenly stop taking this medication. She drinks so much coffee that she gets withdrawal symptoms if she doesn't drink it for a day. The final word for this topic is wound. Wound. It's a countable noun. It has a couple of meanings. Number one, an injury to the body in which a cut or hole is made in the skin, especially one that is caused by a weapon, a gun or a knife, for example. But it could also be from an accident. Number two, a mental or emotional pain caused by an unpleasant experience. Let's see the word family. First we have the verb wound, which means to cause such an injury or a mental or emotional pain. Then we have the adjective wounded, which means injured or suffering from a wound. And then we have the adjective wounding. If something is wounding, it hurts somebody's feelings. And now some collocations. A deep wound. That's when the injury goes quite deep into the body. A flesh wound. That's one that doesn't affect any bones or organs, just skin and maybe muscles and fat. Then we have a minor wound. An open wound, that's one that hasn't healed. A knife or stab wound. A bullet or gunshot wound. To get, receive, or suffer a wound. And you can also say a wound heals. She wasn't seriously injured in the accident, but she suffered a minor head wound which required a few stitches. Emotional wounds can often take longer to heal than physical ones. Today I'm going to talk a bit about health and medicine. I'm going to give some general advice on staying safe and healthy. When you're a child, it's important to get vaccinated against dangerous illnesses, such as mumps, measles, and whooping cough. There is now also a vaccine against chickenpox, but generally speaking, chickenpox isn't quite as dangerous as those others. Thankfully, smallpox was eradicated a few decades ago, so it's no longer necessary to get a smallpox vaccine. Although you shouldn't be scared when you get into a car, it's important to be careful when you drive. I have a friend who was in a terrible car accident when she was in her early 20s. She fractured her skull, ruptured her spleen, and had to have part of one leg amputated. She needed a few operations under general anesthetic. She still has scars from the stitches. It took several weeks for her injuries and wounds to heal. Thankfully, she got a good prosthesis, so she can walk and run like she did before. It's also important to have a nutritious diet, which includes a wide range of different foods so that you get all the vitamins and minerals that you need. B vitamins, for example, are very important. One B vitamin is folate, which helps red and white blood cells form in your bone marrow. Speaking of food, make sure you follow basic rules of hygiene when you're cooking at home. Lots of people give themselves food poisoning because they eat food that is too old or they don't prepare it properly. Food poisoning can wreak havoc on your bowels. Something that a lot of people don't think about is bladder health. Some ways to keep your bladder healthy are to drink plenty of fluids, especially water, limit caffeine and alcohol, and exercise regularly. Exercise has multiple benefits. It lowers your blood pressure, it can help you manage your weight, it boosts energy, and it is even good for your veins. Regular checkups with your physician are also a good idea. Early diagnosis increases your chance of recovery if you have a serious illness. Pap smears are also important for women. A pap smear tests for cervical cancer. The cervix is the narrow end of the uterus, or womb. Nowadays, there are lots of remarkable medications, but it's good to remember that drugs are not a cure for everything. For example, you shouldn't take antibiotics if you have a simple cold. It's also important to be aware that lots of medications have side effects, and sometimes you can get withdrawal symptoms when you stop taking certain drugs. If you're somewhere where there are lots of mosquitoes, remember to use insect repellent because some mosquitoes carry diseases. On a less serious note, try to invest in good quality shoes if you can. Not only will they likely last longer and be more comfortable, but you'll also probably get fewer blisters.